We good shape down there, Mr. Okay, it looks like we're all in our places with our bright shining faces. And thank you for the, we still got a good crowd here. Thank you very much. And as I mentioned earlier, the way this process works, the Planning Commission does the public hearing and in turn makes a recommendation to the town council. And after that, we in turn are required by law to go through the same process. Therefore, again, we are back in session, and I'm going to start the process of having a public hearing for the town council to consider on the first reading a proposed rezoning by the SEMA Corporation, 440 Green Spring Road, Abingdon, Virginia, 24201, who is the applicant, and the application is to rezone property, namely tax map number 021-1-5 and tax map number 021-1-58, to a portion of tax map number 105-A-39, consisting of approximately 33.19 acres, more or less, from the agricultural, forestry, and upland zone district to B2 General Business District. And I'll call on Mr. Johnson to come back and perhaps give us a briefer overview, since we've all been through this exercise once before. But I know that we will have a couple of other questions as a council that we may need to handle in preparation of this. He'll give us a brief overview, and then I'll declare the public hearing to be open, and we'll be prepared to receive input from the public.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you're aware, as we've heard earlier this evening, the applicant is here to consider our first public hearing, a rezoning request before the town council. As you heard, the Planning Commission did recommend in favor, as a vote of 4-1, for recommendation in favor of rezoning the property to B2. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Yes, sir. I have one question. We've talked about this rezoning again from the agricultural zone to the B2 district. What type of activities are permitted in the B2 zoning area?
I am prepared for that. Which would you care for me to read them all?
No, a general overview would be sufficient at this point tonight.
Essentially, general business includes things such as, it can include residential, but basically includes hotels, motels, service stations, restaurants, taverns, general business type activities, retail stores, grocery stores, equipment rental, hardware, banks and financial institutions, garden shops, nurseries, car washes, home appliances, vehicle, anything that general retail is the overarching theme there. If you have a specific request for a specific use, I can check for that for you.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions of Mr. Johnson before we begin this process?
Could you explain the historic, can you give a brief overview of what the historic overlay district is?
The old and historic district is a basic zoning district that we have in town. There has been some reference to this property being adjacent to properties that are zoned OH. For example, Mr. and Mrs. Patterson's property they're zoned OH. This property is currently zoned in an agricultural capacity. Do you have specific questions about the OH district, for example?
No, the overlay.
When you say the overlay, are you really referencing the entrance corridor overlay?
Yes.
Yeah, I apologize. It is technically called the the historical district entrance corridor overlay district. The nature of that is to help protect the entrances to town. Primarily, every road that comes into town is covered by this entrance corridor. I just call it entrance corridor for short. Essentially what it does is it allows the Planning Commission to have input over design guidelines as these properties develop or redevelop. They have some input on how that occurs so that they can protect the interests of the town, the citizens of the town.
And so this property falls within that?
It does, that's correct.
All right, and again, the special use permit on retail buildings over 50,000 square feet is also part of that.
That is correct. There is a requirement in that section of the code, 18-9-4, I believe it is, that does require a special use permit for any type of retail development with 50,000 square feet or greater retail floor space. That adds another layer of review by the council and by the planning commission.
Okay. So in other words, what we're being asked to consider this evening is, right now, the property is an agricultural zone, open space, there's pretty limited activities, and if we acted to rezone it, it would permit a broader level of activities such as the retail grocery store that was being discussed, the hotels and so on. But the basic overlay district that we're looking at, that gives us the ability to negotiate, does it not, what the buildings look like, both front, back, and to, I guess, really negotiate with the developers in terms of how the property will be shaped up in the future. Is that correct?
That is correct. You have two opportunities. First of all, you have the overlay district itself, which requires any developer to come before the planning commission. The planning commission is the body that would issue the certificate of appropriateness. The other layer that you have is the special use permit, which would give council discretion to add some conditions, which we have discussed at length this evening, to that to help guide that development.
Other questions from
I have
Mr.
a
Johnson?
question. We heard a lot of concern about why this location. So why this location?
I guess I would ask the applicant to address that.
Okay, and we'll do that perhaps when we open the public hearing. If that would, okay.
And then my other one is, the other concern that was, I heard over again, is buffer. And I think all of us are taking that very serious.
And I would ask one more question. You know, I guess, I don't know if this is procedurally the right time or not, but it's something that hasn't been touched on. But we've seen a lot of massive investment by local governments in retail development in this area over the last little bit. Washington County has made an investment at a property at exit 19, and then there's similar development occurring at exit 5 in Bristol and also things in Tennessee. And I guess I probably ought to ask Mr. Kelly, but would you care to comment? What is the county's financial investment in this proposal that is in front of us?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, members of the public, the town of Abingdon is in no way subsidizing the commercial development of this property in any way. If the town puts any financial investment into the project, it will be for the upgrade to the Cook Street intersection, interchange area, and to the acquisition and build out of the sports complex. We have not been asked, nor have we offered any incentive to the developer.
So per se, this is not really taxpayer dollars supporting retail development, as we're saying in some other situations.
That would be my interpretation of it, Mr. Mayor. There been reference earlier about Green Springs connector being a portion of the comprehensive plan, which it is, and I should have maybe when I was down on the planning commission level alluded to the fact that not only have we been studying the sports complex for the last 10 years since I've been on council, as town manager, haven't run yet. But we've also been exploring that particular interchange and the Cook Street extension for about that long as well.
Very good. Okay, now, are there other questions from the council to our staff before I open up the public hearing? Okay, hearing none, I will declare the public hearing to be open. And we did have some folks that signed up. You know, we were here for the first hearing, but there may be some additional comments that the public wishes to make. And we do have a list of folks that have indicated that they wish to address the council regarding this matter. And I'll ask Ms. Triplett if she'll call those folks, please.
I've been up twice, I might as well come again.
Absolutely. Good to see you again.
Thank you, thank you. First thing I'd like to do, since my name was mentioned by Mr. Brown, and we want to get the facts right, the first picture I showed, which shows that you will see the new development, was not taken across the Hilton property. It was on my property and the Black Fort Inn property. Second picture that was shown on the Creeper Trail, which also shows that the project will be visible from the Creeper Trail, was not taken from the Hilton property. It was taken across the property that's owned by Black Fort Inn. The Hilton property doesn't start until you get several hundred yards down the Creeper Trail. And it is true that it does roll up and there's no view across the Hilton property from the Creeper Trail as you're moving down. But the Hilton property does end, and after, when you get to that part that's showing ball fields and a hotel, the 6-story hotel, 4-story hotel, whatever goes in, will be less than 200 yards from the Creeper Trail, unless the concept plan is changed. I had a question also regarding the TIA, which I heard tonight for the first time could impact increased traffic and may need cause for widening of the road, which personally would be a problem since we own 340 Green Spring Road also. 2-story house right out the Creeper Trail that's about 10 feet from Green Spring Road. If we start widening the road, then there's going to be a big impact on that 100-and-something-year-old building at the beginning of the mouth of the Creeper Trail. If we widen Green Spring Road, what does that do to the entrance of the Creeper Trail to Trestle 1? The other question that I'd like to address, bring before the commission, is the rerouting of Green Spring Road to bring it in where Cook Street and Cummings now meet. According to conversations I've had with the Virginia Department of Transportation, there is one concept that they've been presented. They say that this project is under the control of the town of Abingdon. It's not a Department of Transportation project, it's a town of Abingdon project. They've been presented with one possible way to reroute the road. There are other ways to reroute it. According to an engineer that I've spoken to there, it could come at the same intersection, but the road could be routed to be a straighter road. I would like to say that when we're doing the TIA, or which I heard tonight, I think that it was a misprint, and it does not say a TIA will not be done, it said a TIA will be done. During the TIA, I would have asked the council to address not only the one possible way of rerouting Green Spring Road, but to also look at a routing that would come at the same intersection of Cook and Cummings. Have one stoplight, that would be great, but looking at the option of coming from Cook and Cummings intersection directly into Green Spring Road and eliminating the loop that is currently coming down. I guess another question is, that loop when it comes down, is that a roundabout or a stop sign? Stoplight? Roundabout would be great if we have to do it, but I would look at another routing I'd like the council to consider. And then the last issue, can I also address the special use permit, or do we wait for that? So if I do it now, I want it to come back. But anyway, on the special use permit, do it, okay. I'll come back in 10 minutes. And the only other comment I'd make is the planning commission tonight, during the conversation, said if it's going to be developed anyway, then this is the best way to develop it. But it will only be developed if the council votes to change the zoning.
Barry Proctor, I live here in the town. Don't intend to repeat what I said earlier, but a couple of additional concerns. One is, once the genie is out of the bottle, and this 30 acres is rezoned, then 200, 300 yards further down the trail, you've got Farmer Green coming to you and say, well, you know, I want my property rezoned. And said, why don't I get the same thing that Mr. Smith and Mr. Brown got? And how can you look at that person and say, well, yeah, I guess we did that one. Well, where did you draw the line on that? And so somebody wants to put in a high-class putt-putt golf course so people can walk off the creeper trail and go over there and do that. How can you say no to that and be fair to what's been done here? So make sure you know where this is going when you let the genie out of the bottle. The second thing I would request is that you postpone any vote tonight. 2 weeks is not ample time for the public to become acquainted with all the issues and to respond to this. Y'all had a year or whatever time you've been working on this. Mr. Brown said he's been working on this thing for 14 to 15 years, and the first publication for this, the official notice went out on the 23rd of September, and that was 2 weeks ago today. And that is not sufficient time for the public to digest this, and if you rely on the wisdom of the community, you're not going to get it after 2 weeks. So I suggest you postpone this vote for at least another 30 days, 60 days, and open it up for public comment. Thank you.
Edward Davis. Ann Proctor.
Don't see you yet.
Mary Cahoon. There's no Green Spring Road. Adam Matthews. Nick Proctor.
Nick Proctor, 11092 Tree Line Drive. I, like my father, will digress from the comments that I've made and have had supported time and time again throughout all of the public comment this evening. About the only true community development benefit that we see in terms of the quality of life that comes out of this development is going to be the sports complex for our youth. But it has been reiterated as well time and time again that those finer points have yet to be resolved. We don't know what's going to happen with the house, historical or not. We don't know about proximity or parking lot space or anything like that. That's the only benefit that, from a community development standpoint, that we're going to see. And all of that is dependent upon factors that are just completely unknown right now. So I would support the idea to postpone the vote, that we, if we're not going to agree with it, that we at least pass it for right now, and let those other larger factors that are going to ultimately determine the success of both the commercial development and the sports complex pan out, because we just simply do not have the information that's necessary to make an educated decision right now.
Greg Mead.
Inadvertently signed the wrong sheet. I thought it was the wrong sheet. I'll take another crack at this.
That's fine. Glad to see you again.
Yeah, sure. I won't reiterate everything's been said tonight, but I would like to make a emphasis on a few other points. A trail as important and significant as the Virginia Creeper Trail, I believe deserves a view shed overlay, much like our historic overlay, and we don't have that in place. And I really would recommend that we consider something like that. Maybe even consider looking at something like that before we approve additional zoning that could impact that. And as Nick has spoken prior to me and several other people, it's been mentioned time and time again, the ball fields. Are we supposed to be talking about the ball fields? We're not supposed to be talking about ball fields. It's very confusing to me. I know that this is not the ball fields are not part of the 33 acres, but they keep coming up time and time again. And they appear to be tied, but they're not tied. It's all very confusing to those of us that just, found out about this. And that leads to my final point is, why does this, have to be done tonight? Most members of the community have had right at 24 hours to process this. And I would ask that we just give the community a little more time to think about it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Dan Harmon,
I'll pass. Thank you.
Jim Bundy, Wayne Miller, Greg Case.
Mine was about not this particular issue. Can I speak now?
No, sir. We will hear you about that.
Mine's about the creeper trail, but it's not in this section, it's in another.
Thank you. We will be glad to hear from you in a little, just in a while about
All
that.
right, thank you.
I was going to say a little bit, but it may not be a little bit.
John Allen,
I'm Dr. Barbara Allen, and I live at 162 Valley View Drive in Abingdon, Virginia. And I'm glad to be here because I feel I personally voted for each one of you, and I'm proud of that. And it's sad to say that we have a great mistrust of our government in this country. And it's pretty much deserved, quite honestly, but there's no reason that I have to mistrust any of you, yet. In a democracy, we elect our officials, and we expect them to represent us. Mr. Brown stated that he has worked it for 15 years on looking for a plan for developing this land. He looked at traffic as well. He mentioned this is the third or fourth generation of plans that he's looked at to work to use for this land. Another fact, Ms. Bircher from the Planning Commission mentioned that this is a very high-quality development and a great deal of planning and effort and time, and apparently excessive documents have gone into this project. The staff has spent hours and hours and hours, apparently, of working on this. And from tonight, obviously, Abingdon has a plethora of residents who feel strongly about their town, as we witnessed tonight. I think something has been missing here. A necessary part of the planning from the very beginning has been lost, has been ignored. It would have been wonderful if Mr. Brown and Mr. Smith and other people had worked with us, with the residents, within that 15 years. And when I look at this town, we have a large number of professional people that are retired here that have it's just a tremendous resource that we have that our town council can use to help you. And we would be glad to give all kinds of information and input much earlier in the process. And I think that this town could have come up with some fantastic ideas. We've got a lot of just brain wealth here that we could use, that we haven't used. It takes a lot more time to get residents' opinions. It's very messy. It's very difficult to do, but it's the right thing to do. I would implore you not to jump into this until a little bit more research has been done, and if it takes a long time, so be it. Abingdon has been here a long time. A little bit more time looking at this is not going to impact us, but jumping into it could impact the town forever. We hold you accountable. You are our representatives. We hold you accountable to protect our treasures, to defend our town. We have no reason to mistrust you yet. Please work with us. Involve us in the process. We will be loyal to you, and we will give you our best ideas. And there are a lot of them out there. Thank you.
Bob Terrell, Tom Boyle, Tristan Nelson, Jamie Whitman.
Okay, that's the list of folks who've signed up. You're prepared to hear from others that wish to address us regarding this matter?
Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm Mike Bragg, represent Cindy and Jim Patterson. I addressed essentially you could hear what I had to say earlier, and with you all's permission, I won't repeat that, just incorporate those remarks as my address to this portion of the council meetings. There's one other thing I would like to just address with you. To the extent that you could see, you might see this as a project that is good for the community because of the overall picture of things, not just what's being done on this proposed rezoning of this tract, but what might be done in what's been referred to as phase 2, the potential of the ball fields, etc. My suggestion is this. How can you be assured that there will be a phase 2 along the lines of what you have been, what has been discussed tonight? Until you have that public partnership worked out for the ball fields, once you have rezoned this portion, then whatever leverage you might have is gone. And I don't mean to suggest any kind of bad faith on anybody's part, but it simply is not there. The owners of that tract, whoever it might be, current owners, or people who acquire it in the future until that occurs, might decide they're not going to do that, and they want to develop that tract. Now, once this tract is rezoned as commercial, let's assume, this is a hypothetical, then a year or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, the owner of that remainder, the residue, what's now being talked to is about phase 2, comes before this board and says we want that rezoned B2 as well, because that the Meadows Shopping Center that Food City has done, it's going so well, it's time to add one to the side of it, bigger and better. Now, once you have rezoned this parcel as B2, you will not be able to say no to that remainder. You're talking about an adjoining parcel. If you say, no, we've got to keep that different, you are going to end up in court and you are likely going to lose because you have established a precedent and you're talking about an adjoining parcel. So unless you can, in my opinion, assure the public that yes, the public-private partnership will be done and you will get these ballparks, that the phase 2 parcel that's not included in this will not be rezoned at a later time as B2, and that the historic Meadows Mansion will be preserved, then I would suggest that you should not go forward and approve this rezoning. If it's going to be done, this project needs to be approved as a whole and undertaken as a whole, even if the development and the other things for phase 2 are not being done in the immediate future, that they're coming down the line. You are setting the stage for changes by acting on the parcel that is before you now. And so it needs to be done as a whole, or it is, I would suggest, and I'd say this respectfully, unwise to undertake it in a piecemeal fashion. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there others that wish to address the council?
Good evening. Other than the fact that I talk slowly, I won't take long. Your seal up here, our
Sir.
seal.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
I'm sorry,
Need you to
Larry
state your-
Harley, 490 Court Street, number 19, Abingdon, Virginia.
Harley,
Harley, Harley. Our seal contains things that all of us are proud of and comprise our heritage. But when we talk to people who go out of their way to come here, they're largely coming because of the barter, the Martha, and the Creeper Trail. The Creeper Trail is the preeminent rails to trail facility in the eastern United States. I've gone online and looked for other ones to take my bicycling buddies to and go for bicycle rides, and they're all really short. This one's different than any other one in the eastern United States. And it's a town park that we developed, you developed, in partnership with others, because that park runs through open, forested, agricultural land. We keep talking about changing this zoning from agriculture to business, but as the mayor pointed out, it's agriculture, forested land, and open land. I gather the deal is, if you'll let me build this development that has this retail shops and hotels, that I'll let you build the athletic area with parking lots right up against the Creeper Trail. That's the vision. I keep picturing exit 14, those two motels up behind Moondog and McDonald's back there. Okay, imagine those two motels just barely more than 100 yards off the Creeper Trail. I really think if we were only talking about Food City Grocery Store going right where it shows on this map, I wouldn't be standing here. But what we're talking about in whole is ruining the open area that our zoning is designed to protect. I urge you not to do this, at least not tonight, with a lot more thought.
This young lady looks like she's on the verge of speech.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Are there others who wish to address the council? Okay. Anyone else? All right. There does not appear to be anyone else who wishes to address the council at the present time regarding this specific issue, and I will therefore declare the public hearing to be closed. And I will ask at this time if council has any additional questions of staff or at this time, or comments they wish to make. Discussion.
You know, I don't know that we have time to explain all of the things that people are worried about. We'll be here another 5 hours. But what I will say to you is this: we have ordinances that have to be followed. We have an overlay, entrance corridor overlay district that is another layer of the ordinances. And you have to start the process somewhere, and tonight is the beginning of the process. This is the first of 2 public hearings. This is not the beginning, this is just the beginning, this is not the end. And so, you know, everybody thinks we're gonna make all these plans and not keep them involved, but all of this is gonna be advertised again, and you will have a chance to come to the council again, but we have to start the process. And so I know people are distrustful of government, so am I. And so I do understand all of that, but you know, we advertised it September the 23rd, and we advertised it September the 30th, again, to start the process. And so there has to always be a beginning. We did not ever talk about rezoning anything that is near the Creeper Trail, because we value the Creeper Trail as much as everybody in this town, and we understand that the Creeper Trail is one of our 2 economic drivers. So our goal is to protect our assets. I know that I haven't been on this council when some of these other things were developed, but I remember reading things about when Elder Spirit was developed and how people were frustrated and upset over houses being developed on the Creeper Trail, and how that has turned into something that has been wonderful for the community because of our ordinances and our planning. I remember when Winterham and Mead Meadows were developed, and that road went across the Creeper Trail from Winterham into Mead Meadows, and I remember all of the frustrations and upset. And again, the town ordinances planned, and we do try to plan ahead with our ordinances. We look at our ordinances on a regular basis. And so the town planned well enough to prevent a developer from developing something that wasn't complementary to the Creeper Trail. So I do hear your concerns, and I want you to know that we agree with your concerns. So, I did want to say that about this whole process. There will be another public hearing.
No, there won't be no public hearing.
Well, there'll be another reading. Okay, there'll be another reading at the next council meeting. So there's 30 days for anybody that is in this audience, or for anybody that has been here or talks about it on Facebook. You've got another 30 days. You can get in touch with Matthew, Sean Taylor, or any of the rest of our staff, and they will sit down with you and they will show you the concept. We're not voting on subdivisions. We're not voting on design. We're not voting on guidelines or lights or any of those things. All we're talking about tonight is the ability for the developers to negotiate with the town through the town's ordinances to see if it's feasible for them and us to allow this development. But tonight is just the beginning of a very long process. And everything that anybody proposes has to go back before the planning commission as far as development is concerned. This isn't an allowance for development. This is an allowance for them to start negotiating with the town to see if it's financially feasible for them to develop. So I do hear all your concerns, and I feel the same way. And I just felt like I needed to say that.
Mr. Humphries, do you have any thoughts about this?
I don't think I could say it any better than Ms. Lowe did. This stuff will be coming back to the planning commission. There'll be design and approval of that to suggest to recommend to the council. At that time, the council can choose to approve it or deny it. The planning commission. The planning commission will choose to approve or deny it. So I would strongly suggest to show up those planning meetings, the planning commission meetings, and they're posted online, and then that way that the buffering and the different things that are concerns that people have had, you'll be able to have input in them. And you will be able to have input in them in the planning commission.
Anything else? Mr. Howard?
It's been indicated tonight, I've been on council for several years, and at least 15 years of that time, we have been trying to find property all over town to build a sports complex. The reason that we're not considering that tonight is we have to have this piece in place before we can do anything down here. All we're trying to do right now is just get this rezoned. I really am sorry that there's not a lot of people that have contacted me over the last 15 years trying to get more sports fields, because I've been inundated with for years, and then nobody shows up. So that's kind of a bad situation, I think.
Well, we have had several people ask us about sports complexes. It's been a hot issue for time to time, many times over the years.
It's been one of the top things on our capital plan.
Mr. Ray?
I would like, I'm curious, I saw a lot of people talk about the alternate places. Why is this now and why here?
Mr. Smith, would you care to take a minute to comment about that? That is a question that I think is very appropriate to address, why you wanted to utilize this spot as opposed, again, to redeveloping where you're currently located.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
Or one of the other,
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, let me just address the first question that the mayor asked first, if I may. We've tried to work with our landlord at our existing location, and if you look at our property now, we are landlocked up there. We butt up against an access road that goes behind us. We've got occupied buildings beside us, and we've tried to be able to grow. We've literally tried to buy that shopping center up there from the landlord. But again, it's an absentee landlord that lives in the Northeast. That really has no interest in Abingdon other than collecting a rent check. And as long as you can look at the condition of the shopping center, and unfortunately, you see the Goodmans moving out, you've seen other people leave, they've become frustrated like we have with the condition of the shopping center. And I don't know what you can do. I mean, we deal with landlords in lots of places. And most of the time, you can work with them and negotiate. We just haven't been able to do that. So we have sought for a number of years to look at alternative locations. And working with Mr. Brown, and it just makes sense to be at exit 17 for us. It's the middle of Abingdon. It's where we think we can do the best, serving the consumers in Abingdon. And the plan there, I drive Green Spring Road every morning going to work and every evening coming home. And to be able to fix that intersection there, to be able to provide ball fields, we recruit literally dozens of people to this community every year. And as I've talked to Mr. Kelly, one of the biggest complaints we get is they have to travel every weekend to take their kids to soccer matches or softball matches or whatever. And to be able to have a piece of property that we can develop as a shopping center in my hometown, to put a state-of-the-art supermarket in, to be able to attract other good quality retailers here, and to be able to work with the town and provide an athletic facility, I think is a win-win-win for everybody. And again, I'm like Mr. Brown. I appreciate people's feelings here. I'm not in the business of making people mad. You know, they can vote with their feet and decide not to shop with me, and I'm sure I've made some people mad tonight, and for that I apologize. But I do think that there needs to be some trust in the fact that the town and the staff has done an outstanding job leading us to a first-class development. And we will build a first-class development. We will build something that I think everybody in this room can say they did what they said they were going to do. I don't know if that completely answers your question, but Abingdon is somewhat of a difficult town to develop property in. There's not a lot of property in the town that we can build a 60,000 square foot store on and have ample parking and ample access to the road networks to service the needs of the consumer. And this property fits those bills.
Thank you very much. Other comments?
And the other one is just about being careful if this goes forward to buffer to what we can, everything we can to protect the viewscape.
I'll make a brief comment or two. Back about 1998, I co-authored a book with Ed Davis, who was here earlier, called The Virginia Creeper Trail Companion. And it was basically an interpretive guide to the trail and helping people to understand what was truly significant about that piece of property. And I'd like to think that I made a positive contribution to promoting the trail, or helping people to understand it and appreciate why it was unique and why it merited the preservation that it's received over the years. And I would also, as been noted earlier, I was very much on the front lines on the Planning Commission and the Town Council back 6-8 years ago when we had what turned out to be a 6-year struggle involving a massive retail development that was planned for Exit 14. It was a development that did not make sense for the public. It was not safe. There were all manner of, and frankly, the taxpayer was going to be burdened with specifically the citizens of Abingdon, with an awful lot of tax bill for infrastructure that was going to come from things that really should have been the developer's responsibility. And I opposed that development very aggressively. I realized at that time, and my fellow council members became aware also, that we really did not have the tools in place as far as the legal structure and framework went to manage growth. We were fortunate to be actually having growth, but we didn't have the tools that permitted us to negotiate, to help shape. We were very much destined to be victims of change rather than instruments of positive change. And so we enacted the two ordinances that we're addressing tonight, specifically the entrance corridor overlay districts and the special use permit for retail structures over 50,000 square feet. It really permits us to negotiate with the developers and to help shape the future and to move it forward. I am going to support this development. There's some people that may not speak to me again, and that would be a shame. But I do think that I have a strong, proven track record of supporting smart growth in this community. And I'm very proud of the record that I've had so far. And it's a difficult thing for me to look at how this is going to come in the future. And some certain aspects of change are very hard for me, but I recognize that change can and will come, and I have the ability to help shape it in a positive way, working with the strong council that we have with us here tonight. And I'm going to quit there. I'm starting to get the blind staggers for this evening. But I will give Mr. Kelly an opportunity. Do you have any comment you wish to make?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I would just state again that since I have been the town manager, which is now 9 years, we have worked very diligently, as Mr. Howard indicated, to try to find a location for a sports complex. One of the things that I learned from going to conferences all across the state of Virginia is that given the economic downturns that we've had in both our state and across the country, it's become more prevalent for there to be public-private partnerships developed to make things happen that you don't impact the taxpayers as largely on as if you had to do it on your own. What we've tried to do from the staff standpoint is, number one, find a great location. Number two, find a great partner in working with us to make our dream of having a sports complex come to fruition, and to also provide economic growth to the town of Abingdon. I would be lying if I said I'm not concerned about the view shed. I've been concerned about the view shed of this property from the very beginning, and from the moment I sat down with Mr. Brown or with Mr. Smith, that's been one of the prime things that we've always talked about is the view shed and the impact that it would have on any neighboring properties. They have always assured me that when we get to the process of the actual development of this site, that they will take those things into consideration. And as Ms. Lowe said earlier, we have site plan approval yet to come, and the public will have the opportunity to see what this thing is going to look at before it's ever built. So I want to reiterate that. And it's nothing that we have done arbitrarily, or just on a whim. We've worked on this for a long time, for a lot of years. And the council, before I was hired, either as town attorney before I became town manager, or as town manager, they've been looking for the sports complex piece for this. So I support this development. I hear the needs and the concerns of the community, and I'm prepared as the leader of the staff to make sure that all the hoops are jumped through and that everything is done according to the representations that have been made to us before this thing is ultimately approved in terms of the site plan.
Mr. Mayor, can I just say one more thing about the process?
You probably say two things.
Okay. I want you to know something else about the process. One of the reasons, I shouldn't say the reason, but one of the reasons we had this meeting with the Planning Commission tonight was because we wanted to hear everything that everybody had to say to the planning commission. Because generally, we don't meet together, and all we get is a report from town staff. So we did this so that we could hear every citizen and everything that they had to say, so that when the developers decide on the actual details of the development, we know what the citizens are asking for. So again, it wasn't that we're trying to fast track it. I think somebody said that. We're not trying to fast track it all. What we're actually trying to do is hear what people expect from us.
Others? Second round? And I'll make one more final comment, which is one of the things that I consider Abingdon to be a very successful community. And I think one of the primary reasons we have been successful has been the emphasis that we have placed on good planning. We have attempted to put ordinances in place that give us the tools to manage and shape growth. We take planning seriously. Our planning commission members have to go through a certification process. All of us here on the council have been through that process. We're serious about planning. And the one thing that we have determined is that if we're going to do something like this, we only have one opportunity to do it, and we're pretty well determined that it's going to be right, and as noted earlier, that it would be a showcase and something that we could be proud of. We did recognize as we went through this process that it was a piece of property that had a lot of stakeholders. It may only be one person or a corporation that owned it, but by golly, everybody who uses the Creeper Trail feels that they have a share of ownership in this. The property, some have said there's a house that was owned by the Robertson family. Some have felt like that maybe it was or wasn't a historical property. I think everybody here thinks that there very definitely was a historic property. Merits preservation. There's a lot of our town's history that went into that. The viewscape is another matter that we've long looked at. And again, we are requiring the developers to do an archaeological survey, which is something that you will seldom see being required of somebody on private property, to do that before they get the approval. But there are indications that Native Americans and others used that property before we came along, and we need to understand their part of the story too before any kind of developments occurred. Now, that's all the comments I wish to make. Anybody else have any further comments? Council, we have a matter before us to consider on the first reading. That's another point. This will be considered, it should have passed tonight on at our November meeting. We have a motion to consider, or have a topic to consider on the first reading, which is the rezoning of the property. Again, I'm going to read it into the record. It is, the applicant is SEMA Corporation. Their address is 440 Green Spring Road, Abingdon, Virginia, 24211. And it's an application to rezone the property, namely tax map number 021-1-5, tax map number 021-1-58, and a portion of tax map number 105A39 that consists of approximately 33.189 acres, more or less. And the change would be from agricultural forestry and open space district to B2, a general business district. Council, what's your pleasure regarding this matter? Thank you. I do need to end the public hearing. I got started on that, but it's good to be at that. Public hearing is closed. Council, I've laid out the issue before us. What is your matter? What are your intention regarding this matter?
I'll be happy to make the motion, Mr. Mayor. I move that we accept the proposal from the Planning Commission to rezone, and I'm not going to read again, but I'm going to say to rezone the property described by the mayor, and approve this on the first reading.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the rezoning of the property as previously described on the first reading. Any further comment? Hearing none, I'll ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Mrs. Jerry?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Okay, thank you. Now, we have another public hearing to consider tonight. The topic before us is a proposed special use permit pursuant to section 18.9 Historic District Entrance or Corridor Overlay District, Section 18-9-4 of the zoning ordinance, Article 3, Agricultural Forest North End Open Space District, Section 3.2, Special Uses regarding single corporation, 440 Green Spring Road, Abingdon, Virginia, 24211, namely tax map number 021-1-5, tax map 021-1-58, and a portion of tax map number 105A39 consists of approximately 33.19 acres, more or less. Mr. Johnson, I'll bet in about 10 words you can tell us what this is about.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You're well aware at this point what that consists of. If you have questions, I'll be glad to answer it.
Does anyone have any questions, Mr. Johnson, regarding this matter? Apparently not. I will therefore declare the public hearing regarding this topic to be open. Is there anyone who wishes to address the council on this proposed issuance of the special use permit? Basically, the special use permit would permit a retail structure larger than 50,000 square feet. If anyone wishes to address, good evening, sir. Come on up. That's right. We're going to talk again about this one.
I did have one comment.
Very good, sir. Good to see you again.
One request. As we talked earlier about page 2 when I was discussing with the planning commission about the facades and walls being visible from the back side as well as the front side, I would like to request that the council change or include that in the special use conditions that are here, in other words, rather than just put it off. And can I speak about process for a minute?
Sure. I'll give you a minute.
Just a thought, as several people have said, they've heard about this for the first time a day ago. And of course, it was posted in the Bristol Herald as required by law. For consideration of the council in the future, something like this, you had the overview picture, which has been presented today, we've discussed several times. You might consider when you post a special joint hearing meeting on your website a month in advance to include a picture so that it's, you look at this description of we're going to rezone, nobody reads that. They see the picture, at least the citizens of the city will know town will know what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there others who wish to address the council regarding this matter? Mr. Johnson?
I do have one point of clarification. The special use permit cannot become effective until the zoning is effective, and so it would have to take place after the second reading.
Okay. Are there others who wish to address the council regarding this particular matter?
And so does everybody understand that we are going to have another reading of this next council meeting? This is just the first step in the process.
Well, again, we're referring to the zoning.
Right. But the special use permit can't be approved without the zoning. Right. So that's why I'm saying that.
Okay. Anyone else wishes to address the council on this matter? There does not appear to be anyone else who wishes to address the council regarding the special use permit that was previously described. I will therefore declare the public hearing to be closed. Council, do you have questions or comments about this from either staff or statements you wish to make?
Well, could we include, Mr. Levine's concern about the back and size of the building? Can that be included in that?
Council's pleasure.
Okay.
Then I would move that that's included in that.
All right. Are you prepared to make a motion regarding this matter?
Yes, that was it.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to reiterate what Mr. Johnson said, that any motion that council should make relative to the approval of special use permit should be contingent upon the final approval of the rezoning.
Okay, so I would be willing to bet that Mr. Humphreys is probably willing to make a motion to permit the special use permit subject to the approval of the rezoning on the second reading and making sure that the backs of the buildings are considered in light of this.
Up to the point of the backs of the building. That really should come from the planning commission.
Okay.
And so I think that that's something, Mr. Levine, if you will, please come to the planning commission meeting. That's something that I will bring up in that also about doing that.
Can we we do that? In other words, I made the suggestion during the planning meeting, but the planning meeting is already approved.
Yeah.
Well,
But the special
Good
use
try, good
permit,
try.
the special use permit and the design, none of that's approved. I mean, the special use permit, if we vote on it tonight, will be approved, but the design will not, that,
there is
Has nothing to do
a
with the
certificate of appropriateness that has to be
The town
issued.
manager just retypes it and puts it in.
well, I think our staff has, they're all here tonight, and so they know what we expect as far as.
The reality of it is, Mr. Devine, that it's a good idea, and we appreciate you raising it because it's very appropriate.
But in thinking about it, I think it really should come from the planning commission to us to follow that kind of chain. So, but the first part, the conditional use of special use permit.
Kelly,
Yeah, I'd like to just make one further comment, and Mr. Humphries may not remember this, but this goes to Mr. Levine's point, is that I believe when we met with the folks at Food City at a planning commission meeting, Mr. Humphries reiterated the need for the backs of the buildings to have a different appearance than the way they used to be built in town before we had ordinances in effect. So that's already been brought before the planning commission, and so when it comes time for the site plan approval, we can attach such conditions relative to the exterior of the building that we think are appropriate. And you're certainly welcome to participate in that meeting.
Okay. All right, very good, sir. Now, I'm interested in helping or working with us to craft a motion. And we have a special use permit request before us. And it has been, we have, if we so desire, the ability to approve the special permit or use permit, noting that it would not come into effect until the actual zoning was approved on the second reading. Would that perhaps be your motion, sir?
That is exactly my motion.
Oh, you did well. You did well. All right, is there a second to that motion?
Second is motion.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the special use permit subject to the approval of the rezoning on the second reading. Is there any further comment or discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask our deputy clerk to call the roll, please.
Mrs. Jerry.
Aye.
Mr. Howard.
Aye.
Mr. Humphries.
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe.
Aye.
Mayor Morgan.
Aye. Thank you very much. Okay, now the fun's not quite over for some of us here. We do actually have some additional business that we need to transact. You're welcome to stay. And there is an opportunity, as noted earlier, for matters not on the agenda, for folks to address us on issues such as the APCO situation. So we look forward to hearing you in a couple minutes.
And Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
You didn't mention about the sausage being made. You didn't mention about the sausage being made.
Yeah, you've seen the sausage here tonight. It was local and it was organic. All right. We have three sets of, all right, council, we have three sets of minutes to consider tonight. We have the September 7, 2015 work session meeting minutes, also the regular meeting minutes from that night, and a work session on September the 16th. Are there any corrections or additions that need to be noted?
I'll make a motion to approve all three unless somebody has any addition.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. Any further comment? Hearing none, Ms. Triplett, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Jerry.
Aye.
Mr. Howard.
Aye.
Mr. Humphries.
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe.
Aye.
Mayor Morgan.
Aye. Unless there is, does our town manager have any reports that he wishes to make? Hearing none, that brings us to matters not on the agenda, and I know there's several people who wish to address us tonight. And how about you long-suffering folks? We're going to let you go first here. Thank you for your patience.
I can't tell you how great it is to be able to talk.
Oh, yeah.
I'll bring her with me too, so you won't
Believe
let
it
me
or not,
off.
we are interested. Good, sir.
Well, as I stated earlier, my name is Greg Case, and my wife Ruth and I, we live in the Wisconsin community along the Creeper Trail. Particularly, you've heard a great deal tonight about the Trestle One, but we have just as grave Sure is a situation going on with Appalachian Electric Power running 138,000 volt, 100 foot tall H-frame steel structures parallel to the Virginia Creeper Trail. Now, this runs from particularly the section of Watauga parking lot, which is trestle 4 to trestle 6. Do you have that map I gave you, or did you throw it away already? If you look, you can see where the Watauga Chapel is. If you found that, the Creeper Trail I highlighted in yellow, and the proposed power line is in red. And as you can see, it runs parallel with a good portion. I wrote that today. I wrote it today from Watauga parking lot over to Trestle 6, and you will clearly see this 100-foot tall structure with these power lines. And the Creeper Trail is part of Abingdon. It really is. And it is beautiful through that valley. The Watauga Valley is a community. People come, Dr. Whitman and I have been out there quite a bit taking signatures, and we had people from all over the country. They come here to ride that trail and hike it. And if you've been on it, and I know many of you here personally that have probably walked and biked that part of the section, it's probably the prettiest section on the Creeper Trail. And we live there. Matter of fact, my wife's farms have been in her generation for 5 generations. And we've really striven to keep that farm and that property open. But this will devastate the natural beauty of that region, the Watauga Valley. And this is a pretty major injury. And you all being on the town, I would think, since it's the second most draw here at Abingdon, this would be something you'd be very interested in. We've gotten hundreds of signatures already, Dr. Whitman. We have hundreds from hikers and bikers, people who live there in the community. We have a little Watauga Chapel Church. On Sundays in the summer, they have church services and gospel music right there. And there are many, many people that come. And looking right out of that church, you look across the Watauga Road, and you will see right there this structure. And it comes right across in front of what used to be my brother-in-law, Charlie Hope, his farm. And it's just devastating to the area. And I would think many people who walk this trail, they're going to just see this and think, why on earth was this put here? It takes away from the beauty. We would hope, too, that you might, if you haven't walked that trail, have any of you walked that section? Yeah. I'm preaching to the choir here. It is beautiful, and if you walk, you will look to the left. And just imagine now, these 100-foot tall structures that's taller than behind us is the 500,000 volt line. This is 138, and who knows, they wouldn't upgrade that eventually. But the point is, this is going from, if you know where Shelford Bridge is, they're wanting to run power from the Arrowhead Station over to Vance Mill. We're not against that. There are other proposed routes that will take them there. I want to make that clear. There are other proposed routes that will take them there that we feel are very less intrusive. And it will run basically north from Arrowhead up and hit the existing 500,000 volt line that runs right behind our farm, and we have no objection to that. They're going to run on the farm. We have no objection. But to come through the way it does and run parallel with the Creeper Trail, devastating the community and the natural beauty of the region, it's unbelievable that they even propose this.
If I might interrupt for just a second, Mr. Humphreys, I think you had raised an issue concerning along the Old Mountain Victory Trail,
Yes.
that there was also, which is another section of trail that is owned, yes, by the town.
It is owned by the town,
Yeah.
it is. does, and then of course Charlie Hope and Blair Keller and all that whole bunch down there were very instrumental in creating that, helping create the Over Mountain Victory National Historic Trail. That power line actually will also reach the Over Mountain Victory National Trail also, and that is town owned right now. And so from the viewscape standpoint, it'll be detrimental, I think, to not only the Creeper Trail, but also to the Over Mountain Victory National Historic Trail.
Correct. Now, that route runs from the proposed Vance Mill going north to the existing Abingdon station.
Well, I would just, state that I have some concerns about this. We have some issues raised, and it is developing. And if it would be agreeable with you folks, I would like to ask if our town manager would inform Appalachian Power that we have concerns about this development, the impact that it's having on town properties and the Creeper Trail. Notify them, formally that we do have concerns, that there is a need for us to have discussion with them and to perhaps have them come to our November meeting where we might have an overview of this and what they're proposing and allow us to take this matter up formally.
I might add here too that Mr. Wayne Miller, president of the Creeper Trail Club, has already taken the unanimous vote from the board members and is in the process of getting a position paper in opposition to this particular route, since there are other routes. And he is going to send that to a George Porter, and I've listed his name there. He is the outreach specialist. He's the head guy of it, and he has a phone number there and an email number, of which he's heard a great deal from us already. But we would hope that you guys may express an opposition to this route to AEP, because right now, this very minute, in fact, they were out there 2 days ago, Allie, and they're looking it over. I mean, yeah, they're looking it over, and
Is a question ever been asked, why can't they use the existing line?
We have asked them.
What they had told us was the power grid in Abingdon is taxed,
Oh, yeah.
supposedly. And again, we're not opposed to them getting power to people who need power. We're just asking them to go along their existing lines. When I said that, they said, well, you can't make it much more than the 500,000 volt that we have. We need an additional 180,000 volts at this time. And I said, well, why can you not run that side by side? Because it actually exists at exit 3. I have pictures of it. And they said, well, we can do that. And I'm like, you already have existing right-of-ways. Those lines were put in there in 1969, and they've already had those right-of-ways. I had bought my property on the River Knob Farms with nothing blemished and built a beautiful house, which I'm 8 weeks from getting into. But they said if they go along existing lines, they have to tell the SCC why they have to spend more money to do so. They said because the electricity, with the magnetic fields the way they are, would bounce from line to line, and you have to wrap those lines. You have to twist them a certain way, which costs a little extra money. So they have to be able to go to the SCC and say why we have to go this way. Well, one, I don't necessarily know it's going to cost them more money, because I'm going to fight them tooth and nail for my property. I told them it will have to be taken from me. I use that property. You were talking about your sports complex, and that seems to be an important part with the Creeper Trail deal. My property is used free of charge to 40 children each week to ride horses. They only have to pay the trainer a minimum fee to train them and watch them. The liability insurance is free from me. The horses they use are mine, and they're free. And a lot of them are rescued horses from this area that I retrain, so they're not taken across, the country and slaughtered. And the property is used free for these children. I have special needs children who ride out there. I have kids who are homeschooled that need some socialization. I share my property already, and we're just asking them to avoid the Creeper Trail. So not only do they want to destroy my home and my property value, and like I said, I came back here to practice medicine. I could have gone anywhere in the world I wanted to, but I came back to my hometown to be a family practitioner. And it means a lot to me to be here. I love taking care of the people I grew up with. But not only destroy my home, but to destroy the section of the Creeper Trail I ride my horse on, walk my kids on, bike, socialize with my friends that I pass is not acceptable to me. And so when you're going along that beautiful bridge and you're looking at this man's farm and his family that have had opportunities to make millions of dollars off of this property, and they've never sold it because they value the land and they value nature, they've not done it. So you're going to be able to see from this beautiful bridge at Watauga where the parking lot is, look to your right if you're walking into Abingdon and see these 100-foot structures But there's nothing appealing about them whatsoever, especially when they can go along their existing lines.
Well, you know, I think I appreciate you telling us that part of what their rationale is, and it may very well be that we can help them to explain to the SCC why they need to wrap those lines. But again, it would be my request, Mr. Kelly, that you would notify them that we have concerns and that there is a need for us to meet with them.
Yes, sir. We already have notified them, and I've had at least one meeting with some of the staff, and Mr. Wayne Miller was involved in that meeting with them. They are planning to make a presentation, and I believe, and John, were you in the meeting, John? I believe they indicated there were 2 required public hearings that would be coming at some point down the pike.
See, they told us very differently. They told us typically, if you look at the timeline, which we will bring it to you, and Cecil actually mentioned that maybe we can have a special session on this on the 21st, but they make it sound like they're going to make a decision in the next couple of weeks. Actually, with the email request and things, actually, one of my friends said that tomorrow was the end when George Porter was going to take our comments, which blew my mind. And they sprung this up on us quickly too. They didn't, like I said, they didn't even notify me that they were going to destroy my property. And so they seem like there's this time pressure to go ahead and quickly make a decision, take it to the SEC and move forward.
See, we must say, we just got notified 2 weeks ago about
He
this.
notified me.
And she didn't even get a letter, but they had the open house, and now we find out the time frame. They're going to file an application with the SEC, the State Corporation Commission, around the 1st of November. So we're in a very short window.
Yeah, and there's also a public comment section for them. Do you know what the time frame for the
They already
Corporation
had
Commission?
one open house meeting.
We've had
2
one
weeks
open
ago.
I know you, but there'll also be a comment section that you can provide written comments
Well, we've
to
been
that
sending
too.
written
Yeah.
comments.
Well, no, I mean, not to
out.
this guy. This guy's athletic
Okay.
guy. This is the
The SEC.
Yeah,
SEC.
there's a bit more of a process than
Right.
than they're telling you, and
Well, they said once they notify the SEC of the route, then everybody who was affected within 500 feet of it would get this letter. Well, I didn't get their first letter. And so these people are just trying to push this on. And I don't think Wayne Miller, he's a nice gentleman, but I don't think he understands the devastation they're talking about. I mean, they're talking about knocking the trees down. They sprayed the herbicide where these can't grow for 8 years, and you're going to be able to see that.
well, we're
all on the same
oh
page.
yeah,
I know, I'm
yeah.
very passionate about it.
Well, that's-
because
that's
it's
fine.
But the timeframe, sir, what we were told at the open house, they're taking all of this input right now. And then they're filing it, and according to the timeline, they don't give a date, but there's a little sliding thing, and it looks like it's around the 1st of November. When they file that with the ACC, that supposedly is when they make that choice of which route. And if it affects us, we'll get a call to go to the SEC hearing, and that is a chance where we can say this again, but I don't know what our chances are.
We are very concerned about this, and it's clear that the public's concerned, and it has an implication or a potential impact on assets of the town, and you know, we certainly are prepared to express our concern and find out. You know, we need to have discussions with them. We really do, and
they're very deceptive. Like I said, they're telling the community, oh, it's not going to be that bad. I'm like, yes, it is. Don't you dare do this. And I said, you know, they're talking about their whole point is to get from point A to point B, and they have to tell the SEC why. And, you know,
Cheapest route.
yeah, exactly. If something doesn't make sense, money is behind it. And so I think they believe going through our farmland would be one of their cheapest routes, but they're going to devastate all the homes on Celebrity Lane as well as the Creeper Trail, as well as the community. I mean, like I said, it's probably one of the prettiest sections, and that's honestly one of the big things that brought me back home was that Creeper Trail.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
This is an election year for the County Board of Supervisors.
We've already been there.
all right.
And they are having their League of Women Voter Forums, and it wouldn't be a bad idea to find out how the candidates feel about supporting or not supporting it.
I've already called Israel Quinn's office a few times, and Jacob Holmes spoke to me, and he's like, well, we're just kind of talking to AP and sitting on, you know, looking back. And I'm like, no, you need to be out with the people who voted you in, because that's how you get in the position. Same with you all, how you get in the position that you're in. And that's not been much help. Bill Carrico was willing to speak to me. We called Morgan Griffith's office. He's like, it's not a federal matter.
I'm actually talking about the Board of Supervisors.
Right, well, actually, James Baker came out against it
Yeah, he did.
on TV the other day. So he came out and
Yeah,
gets
he was
it.
actually-
He said it would cost approximately $750,000 per year in lost tax revenue if it went through.
Subdivision,
That's what he
So, yeah, we appreciate you guys trying to help us, but like I said,
Yeah, we do.
this is the sneakiest thing anybody's ever done to me, and I think it's despicable that they think that they've got so much money, they can just come over and run over the landowners and the people who are from here who serve their community. And like this man, his family has given us a lot, even without doing anything. They shared their property, and just their beautiful views they provide us with draws people from everywhere to that creeper trail.
But if you could give a
Yeah.
voice in opposition, then I feel we have a very good defense here. I
Yeah.
really do. Because there are other existing routes that we feel aren't as
Well,
interested.
well,
So
there-
with your all's help, I think we can stop it.
Well, I think you're correct. There are other routes, and again, the potential economic impact, frankly, on what we're. This is an odd way, considering how the meeting has gone tonight, and the preservation, and we hear you. We really do.
We thank you very much.
Well,
It's been a
thank you.
long night, guys.
Well, thank you for your patience, and we appreciate you coming out and hanging in with us here. But you'll find us very concerned about this.
Very good, thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Speaker, I believe there was a rumor you wish to address us tonight.
You don't think that will work?
All right, let's go.
This color light doesn't work too well.
Thanks for sticking.
Thank you.
9 o'clock is my bedtime.
All right.
Good evening, I'm Mike Spiegel, 910 Sawgrass Circle, and I have about 45 pages I'd like to hand out.
All right. Yeah.
This is some information I previously provided to you, updated.
Okay, thank you.
I'm here in connection and representing Abingdon High School, specifically the Abingdon High School golf team. And I have with me Gabe Long, who is the assistant
Principal and Athletic Director, and Debbie Creasy. And as you all may know, Abingdon High School has been awarded the host site for the 2015 3A and 4A state golf championship this year. And if you haven't noticed, they have a pretty good team. They've had a pretty good nucleus here for a couple of years. And I'll just give you a little bit of history. My son plays junior golf. We travel the southeastern United States all summer long. We play 15 to 20 tournaments a year. When we're playing, we're out of town. We're spending 3 to 4 nights a weekend in a hotel, buying food, meals and incidentals, golf course expenses. And that's typically what happens with tournaments. And that's what's going to happen with this golf tournament. We're anticipating bringing, well, it's 75 players as I have on that sheet, and probably 300, my estimate is over 300 people from outside of 1.5 hours away from Abingdon to town for what I estimate to be 3 nights. The school can host this tournament by themselves, and they often do. And with our experience in tournaments and what we've seen, we want to take this opportunity to make a really special event from a state champion standpoint. And the VHSL doesn't fund golf because it's a non-revenue sport. They provide some funds to hold the tournament, but we want to make it really special because that's not what the VHSL does. We're having it at a great course. Virginia High School League, I'm sorry. We're going to have it at a great course, and we want to make it a great experience for the players. And I've been looking at it from an opportunity from the town's perspective, tourism. Up until a couple of days ago, I was working on, putting the information together from Barter, from the Creeper Trail, and I contacted Mr. Costello and the Visitors Bureau and worked with them, and they've helped us tremendously to get some information out. But what we'd like to do, and what we're here to request tonight, is some funds to assist our budget. The tournament is Monday and Tuesday, so we're, the wagon's in front of the horse at this point in time, but luckily we've been able to work with a very malleable budget that is obviously subject at this point in time to
what you might be able to do for us. But based on this information, I think we're going to bring 300 people to town. They're going to require 330 hotel nights while they're here. They're going to spend close to $100,000 and generate over $6,000 in meals and lodging taxes. Anything that the town can do to help us would be appreciated. We're asking for $3,000, which would basically help us fund the whole event. It wouldn't be all the funding we have. We've been out raising money, and it would help us to put on a quality event. And it's something that we'll have the opportunity to do. Abingdon High School is very interested in hosting this in the future, and they will have the opportunity to do it at least once every 4 years. And they are willing to do that. Glen Country Club is signed on board. They love hosting it, and they love the exposure it gives them. And we think it'd be a good opportunity for the town, and we're here asking for that.
I must admit, my focus isn't quite as intense as it was a little earlier this evening, but I wasn't clear about what organization is specifically requesting the funds and how they would be used.
It's the Abingdon High School golf team.
Okay.
And
they have a bank account.
it would be run through the school activity funds or whatever particular fund is on the school. Basically, we're going to provide some meals for the players. We have to obviously pay for the golf course facilities that we use. We're going to provide. I've already got welcome to Abingdon banners that we're going to post in the right of way, hopefully right along John Silver's. And we've already sent out, I think it was 112 packets barter, all the brochures from the Visitors Bureau. It's Monday and Tuesday. Yes, they'll start arriving Saturday. Everybody will be, there's only one team coming from Hidden Valley, which is Salem. Everybody else will be from Norfolk to DC to Winchester. It's all the schools that are similar size to Abingdon High School.
Very good. Go ahead.
How did Abingdon High School get selected?
Well, basically, they have a good team. They've had a good team. Well, my son's been playing, and this year we had Connor Creasy, and the team's playing really well. And just yesterday we were runner-up in region, which means we lost to last year's state champion, but we beat them twice earlier this year. We're hoping to take it to them one more time.
So Mike, I see Janet Woolon back there. So Janet, I want to know if you've been giving our number out. These people want to buy.
We can. We worked with some sponsors. Well, we sent out all the brochures from all the restaurants and all the listings, and we do have some sponsors, some hotel sponsors that provide.
Very good.
And just because you're not doing it, if you'll just toot the horn of Andrew and Connor
yes,
for
we have
1 minute, please.
I will. Andrew, my son's a junior. Before his sophomore year, he received a scholarship offer from the University of South Carolina, so he's got another year of high school golf. And Connor Creasy is every bit as good, and he's just a freshman, and if he hasn't already received D1 offers, he will be. So you have two kids out there who are already spreading the name of that.
And Debbie, just one thing, I'll ask you a question because I saw Connor on TV. He won a special award this year too, didn't he?
Yeah, he won the U.S. Kids Team World in July.
Very good. Mr. Mayor, I move that we give the Abingdon High School golf team $3,000 out of council contingency and thank them for having their tournament in Abingdon.
I second that motion.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to make a donation of $3,000 from council contingency funds to the Abingdon High School golf team in support of their efforts to have the provide the state golf tournament here at Glen Country Club. Is there any further comment or questions? I'll ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dewey.
Aye.
Mr. Howard.
Aye.
Mr. Humphries.
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe.
Aye.
Mayor Morgan.
Aye. Okay. Thank you. You got that just because
Because I waited you out?
That's for sitting here all night.
endurance.
I'm not sure about that, but thank you, Mr. Mayor, thank you, Council.
You're welcome, sir, and good luck. We're going to be following
Thank
this.
you very much. And you all were real troopers to step through all of this. I tell you what, that was a long night.
So the tournament is this week? Monday and Tuesday. Can I have off work?
All right, council, is there anyone else who wishes to address council on matters not on the agenda? I'm not seeing anybody that does. We have a series of appointments that need to be made. Do we wish to make them tonight?
Yeah, let's take
All right,
them.
we're going to be tabling. All right.
I'm not used to being on this side.
We have a series of announcements. I'm not going to read them all. But I will note that October the 12th is Meet the Candidates Night, Washington County. There's another one on the 15th. And I will point out the Arthur Campbell Awards, where we honor those who've made outstanding contributions to the town of Abingdon, and lasting contributions, will be held on October the 16th. And I'm going to call it quits unless somebody else has something. Do we have a work session this month? Wow. Okay, we'll see you then. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Okay, tell them about the sausage, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry,